I thought I would start with fire paperwork first. Cause typically for a brand new agent, you may have a buyer before you're on a listing appointment, so we'll talk about some buyer stuff and questions and things like that. Do you have an intake form you use when you meet with a buyer?
I do, in Command. In the design applet,
Mm-hmm.
there's a buyer presentation that you can customize. And so I have one now that's customized,
Okay.
and it's good because it goes over, you know, how they like to be communicated with, mornings, afternoons, all the time, anytime, phone, email. And then it goes through what they're looking for in a home. And so I make a copy for them, a copy for me. And I take my notes on my copy and then I put that as part of like their file. So yeah, there's a whole, it's like an hour and a half.
A good buyer consult is an hour to an hour and a half. Because all the while you're doing that buyer consult, you're building rapport.
Mhm.
So, there are, when you see the amount of buyer paperwork, there are some of our seasoned agents that will just ship it all off for them to be signed, but they still need to be explained.
Mm-hmm.
So, we recommend Debbie uses, she sits down with the buyer. And sometimes you can sit down with the buyer with the mortgage rep. And so that's like a whole little mortgage does their thing, and then you kind of get the feel of their likes and their wants and what. I used to always ask my buyers when I first met them, tell me everything you want in the house. And they list it all, and it would be, the this and the that. Okay, now tell me of this list, what are your must-haves?
Okay.
Well, I need bedrooms, okay, and I have to have 2 bathrooms, okay. I could do without all right, so then I would break this laundry list into must-haves and X bonus things. So that when I was searching in the MLS, I would put the search to their must-haves and then go from there. Like some of them will say, oh, I absolutely have to have a 2-car garage. And then I'd say to them, well, if I found you a house that had everything that you wanted, but it was a 1-car garage, could you live with it? And more than likely they say yes. They don't want to sacrifice something for something else, so. Alright, I'm gonna give them 2 more minutes and then that's it. And I'm going to the buyer packet.
Just remember grab some tea.
Go grab whatever you want, you got 2 seconds, well, you have more than that, I won't start till you get back. So you've been fingerprinted already?
No, I was a little bit confused because when I tried to do the fingerprints, it asked me for a code, sponsor code or something.
It should be, Roel can always find it for you. It should be on this is your score report,
Yes.
here's your application.
I believe I also did it on the website. And it takes me to the fingerprint, I think, agency, and they ask me for a code.
Okay.
Sponsor.
Alright, so. The man, the myth, the legend. Ruel will know exactly where to find that.
Okay.
I'm not sure where it is too. I don't know if it's your app. I think it comes from your there's should be somewhere. Around here. You'll be able to tell us where it is. Okay, South. I have a buyer. So Amanda has done a really great job of organizing our resources. So in this resources, we've got buyer packets, listed landlord packets. So this would be for rentals, then you've got listing, then you've got tenant. And then it's broken down into the different MLSs. Commercial, it's all in here, everything, Najar and JMLS, but. What we've done is we've created a buyer packet. So you can access the forms from here. Once you're set in command and you do the opportunity and go through that way with Amanda. When you create the opportunity in command, it automatically, you have to tell it what type of opportunity it is, and it automatically brings all this paper into your folder. So you don't have to click, we're gonna click on them individually today because it's just easier for me to have it. So the first thing that you're gonna do, you're gonna sit down and you're gonna talk to the buyer. You're gonna have a conversation, just like Debbie and I were talking about. Before you wanna shove paperwork in front of them to sign everything. It's like the Q&A, schools. Do you, what are your ages of your children? How many people are gonna be in the house? Do you need to be near transportation? Like a bus or, sometimes like in Hasbrouck or Woodridge, they'll wanna live a block away from the boulevard because the 163 New Jersey Transit bus goes down the boulevard and takes them right into the Port Authority. So it's kind of like how are they gonna go to work? Is transportation key? Do they need to be by the highways? For where we are, you can jump on anything. Cause you're in Hackensack, Debbie's in Clifton, I mean, we can jump on Route 3, the Parkway, the 17 and be any place quickly. So as you're talking to them, you're making all your notes. You might write down how many children. Are they young? Are they old? Are they toddlers? Is she pregnant? When is she due? All sorts of stuff, because then, no, my allergies today, because it's gonna be warm. Well, you can put all that into, when you get access to command, you're gonna build all of that and put anniversary dates and things along those lines to help you remember to touch base with them later on. So now you've got the whole thing, they want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, they don't care so much if it's a colonial or a split level, they don't want a Cape Cod because it's really kind of tiny. They're pre-qualified for mortgage, so you know how much to spend, they have to spend. And that's where the mortgage consultation comes in. Cause the last thing you wanna do is spend time with buyers, and we've all done it. Spend time with buyers and they find the house of their dreams and then they can't afford it. Even to the point where a lot of the agents have been facing bidding wars for houses. And some of the agents have backed down the price range that they're showing the buyers. Because they know if a new listing comes on. And say your buyers are qualified to 600,000, and that's pretty high for a first time home buyer, but I'll use round numbers, 600. And that's the max they can go. It's not a good idea to show them 600 or $590,000 houses, because if it goes into a bidding situation, they're not getting it because they can only go to 600. So some of the agents will say, all right, we're gonna look in the 500 to 525 range. And that in the event that we get in a bidding situation, we have room to play with. If you have to increase your offer. So that's, normally we don't have that situation, but the market that we're in, that's the way it is. So. Bella, you're coming in at a good point because you don't have any bad habits. This form is called an exclusive buyer agency agreement.
Okay.
When the law changed in August of 2024. The agents cannot take a buyer out, cannot show houses. Unless they have this form filled out. So for our seasoned agents, they had to do something, they had to change the way they worked. And, you know, the adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I've been trying for a year and a half to teach them new tricks. So when we get new agents that just got their license, you don't have any bad habits yet, so it's easy for you. It's gonna be easier for you to learn the exclusive buyer agency agreement than Mr. Pennell was. Because he's been doing this for 20+ years. Basically, what this form says is it has the buyer's names. It would have our office, it has your name. And then you're gonna make an agency agreement. So, like in real estate school, we always check the box that says buyer's agent, disclosed dual agent. So just as a refresher, if you're a disclosed dual agent, that means that the listing more than likely is attached to an agent in this office. So we always say we're gonna be we're always a buyer's agent. We warn them that we could be a disclosed dual agent if it happens. You put the term. This is where it gets tricky. Debbie will tell you, sometimes they're new, they're just getting to know you, they may only wanna say, all right, 30 days. Okay, that's fine, cause you can build rapport in 30 days. And then as it gets close to that 30 days, you're just gonna extend the date and they're gonna initial it. Sometimes they'll say to you, I just want a buyer's agency agreement for this house. And that's okay. So in that case. Up here, it tells you where you're going to work. Now. If they leave it blank, it means you're gonna show them every house in the state of New Jersey. I don't necessarily recommend that. Because it ties them up. I would rather say to them, for me, I'm gonna work in Bergen County, Passaic County, Hudson County, Essex County. Then I'll go out to Morris County and I'll put those 5 in there. And if my buyer suddenly said to me, I can't find anything in my price range here. I think I need to go down over the big bridge beyond South Amboy. I think I need to go look in Aberdeen or Middletown where I can get the ferry over to Lower Manhattan. Okay, I'm gonna find you a super great agent that works in that area. And then you do a referral. So now you don't lose out, you're gonna get 25% of whatever they buy down there. And they're gonna enter into a buyer agency agreement for those counties below the bridge. It works better that way. Some agents like to travel. I have agents that show in down in Tom's River and Point Pleasant all the time. They love to go down there. So it just depends on what you wanna do. But if you didn't have a county and they said, no, it's just gonna be for this listing, you would put the address of the property over there.
Okay.
And then the time. It has to have a term. And the really important part is that you need to put in B. How many days after the term expires that it still works, and we'll get into more of those nuances later, but. Cause. The commission. This is what hangs up most of my agents. By law, it says here the commissions, let me see if I can there we go. And this comes right from the case law from 2024. The commission must be objective. In other words, it has to have an amount. It can't be open-ended. And it can't say that the seller is gonna pay the commission. So what I tell people is, up in this line here, you check that box. And you put at least 2.5%, 2.5. Some agents put 3, that's okay. Now your buyer's gonna say, I'm not paying. This is my first time house, I can't do that, and say, okay, I understand, and I'm gonna show you how we make it work. But we have to have an amount here, because this says what commission is due to Keller Williams Parkviews for me working with you as a buyer's agent. And it talks about, what you're gonna do, how it's gonna be. This is the protection period that I talked about. In other words, after the term is over, there's a certain set number of days, most agents put 90. That say that if you don't sign another agency agreement, you can't go buy that house with somebody else because I showed it to you. So it's protecting all the work that you do. You do have to give them a list of the houses you showed them, but when you get into command, we'll show you how easy that is to maintain the list. So it says, under the law, a seller can offer commission to a buyer's agent. So this is where we tell them why you put 2.5 or 3%. If you had 2% on that line, and the seller was willing to pay the buyer's agent, you, 2.5%, because you have 2% on your form, that's all you can get. The other 0.5% is gonna go to your buyer. So that's why I tell them either put 2.5 or 3. I have agents that will put 2.5. Seller was giving the buyer agent 2%. And my agents will say to the buyer, look, I'm okay. I know my form, our agreement says 2.5. Seller's gonna pay me 2%. I don't need the 0.5% to come from you. It's okay. And that's a win-win, because now the buyers say, oh, what a nice agent. Or they could have asked for the extra 0.5%, and they're gonna tell people how wonderful you were to work with them. And then here, remember I said that up here is how much, this is what you're gonna get paid. And it does say the buyer agrees to pay the broker, and that's scary for first-time buyers. Because they dig their heels in. And that's when you come back and say, I know it says it here on line 60. But, Mr. Buyer, look over here on line 107. If a seller is offering to pay broker an amount less than the commission buyer has agreed to pay broker, buyer directs broker to do the following thing. Include in any offer to seller that the seller will pay the broker's commission. So that's where you make sure that you check that box. So now you say, Mr. Pryor, up here, line 60, it says, for my services, it's 2.5%. But any contract I write for you, we're gonna ask the seller to pay my commission. So you're not doing it. Now, are there ways that they do? Some, you work with the mortgage company, they work it into the mortgage. In other instances, it's what they call a seller's concession that deals with the mortgage. But you just need to reinforce to the buyer, the seller's gonna pay my broker's commission. I'm gonna write the contract that way. So this tells this is what you do for the buyer. You're gonna find houses, anything that you know about the house, you're gonna tell the buyer about the house. And you're going to represent them and negotiate on their behalf for them with the contract. Sometimes you have to remind the buyers of what they have to do. They've got to give you accurate information about how much they can afford. You have to tell them, I'm your agent. You're gonna get business cards. We all do this. I'll give a pack of business cards with a little rubber band or a little nice little envelope, and I'll give them to my buyers. And I'll say, look, I can't be everywhere. If you're gonna go out and you're gonna look maybe on the weekend, cause I'm not available, or you just happen to drive past on a Sunday afternoon, you weren't going anywhere, you drove down the block and there's an open house sign. You can go into the open house, but you have to tell the agent that's at the open house. I'm working with, I'll use my name, I'm working with Joyce Powell from Keller Williams Parkview, she's my agent, here's her business card. And you give it to the agent, and the buyer gives it to the agent at the open house. That says to the agent that's running the open house, they now know that buyer's got an agency agreement with Joyce. And, sometimes I would tell my buyers, tell me ahead of time. And I would call the listing agent. Their numbers are in the MLS. Once you get access to that, I'd call the listing agent and say, look, I'm gonna be out of town this weekend. My buyers just let me know they're really interested in your listing and they're gonna come to your open house. Their names are John and Mary Smith. I have a buyer agency agreement with them. And look, we all gotta work together. No agent's gonna turn around and say, no, they can't come. Because eventually you want they may need somebody to do that for their buyers, so we play well in the sandbox. So you need to remind the buyer, you're gonna present all the offers, they can't go around to deal with somebody else. Any house they see, you can represent them, even if it's a for sale by owner. You can contact that seller and say, look, I have a buyer interested in your property. So it's all about communication. And the working relationship is a two-way street. And the conversations like Debbie has with her buyers, it opens up and you're building a client for life. Because this may be their first purchase. And then after they close, you're gonna send them anniversary cards, you're gonna send them a Christmas card, you're gonna say you're gonna send an email. Can you imagine it's 1 year you've been in your house already? Why are you gonna do that? Because when they outgrow that house, if you sold them a 2-bedroom house and baby number 2's on the way, they need to go to a bigger house. And when they need to go to a bigger house, they're gonna call you. Because you've built that rapport with them, you're their agent for life. And when they call you, when they've outgrown that house, now you're gonna get a listing. And you're gonna get them as a buyer on another property. So I've got agents in here that have been working with the same buyer, even myself. I mean, I've had one client that's bought and sold 3 times already. So it's just, and that's the report. This is the relationship business. So once you get through this buyer's agency agreement, you explain it all to them and how it ends, and then they sign it and you sign it. And that's your buyer's agency agreement. Beyond that, in addition to the buyer's agency agreement, you have to give them,
These were good. The informed consent to dual agency.
yeah, that's where that's what I was looking for.
It's the third one.
Yeah. So then you go to this one. So you have your buyer agency agreement. Then you sit down and you sign what's called the informed consent, oh, that's designated agency, we hit the wrong one.
It's right under the AFPA.
Oh, there you go. So then you get this is the informed consent to dual agency, this says, Mr. Buyer, we're gonna look at a lot of houses. And there may be a house that you wanna see that belongs to an agent, is listed by another agent in my office. And in that regard, the office represents both the buyer and the seller, and that creates dual agency. It just means, Mr. Buyer, I can't tell you the number that seller wants for their property. And I can't tell the seller what you're willing to pay. Because we have to represent both parties fairly. So that's the second form that you fill out. Then you also have what's called the consumer information statement. And basically this was created by the state, and it just tells them, in the state of New Jersey, I'm a licensed real estate agent. I can be a seller's agent, I can be a buyer's agent, I can be a disclosed dual agent, I can be a transaction broker. Transaction broker doesn't represent anybody. They're just a paper pusher. They have no fiduciary responsibility to either the buyer or the seller. All they want to do is say sign here. And designated agent, it's new, we don't have too many of them around here. And then it explains each one of those parts. And then your buyer is gonna sign it and you're gonna sign it. Down at the bottom for buyers and tenants. So they've got one form that is for sellers and landlords and buyers and tenants. So you just sign depending upon which one you want. The other form that you're gonna explain to them is called wire fraud. Wire fraud is rampant in the real estate business. And this form, all this does is explain to your clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, what wire fraud is. Wire fraud is where some mean person takes your email address or the email address for the title company, the email address for the attorney, and tweaks it. Maybe they take the capital I and they make it a lowercase l. So people that looking say, oh yeah, that's an I, when it really isn't. And this email is going to say, progress on your transaction, you need to wire $10,000 to this address. Believe it or not, people do it. And then they're out the $10,000. And there's usually a phone number on that email address. The client can never call that phone number because that's the phone number for the bad guy. So if they think it's coming from their attorney or coming from you, before they do anything, they need to call you. Or they need to call their attorney or the title company and say, hey, look, I just got this email saying that you want me to wire $10,000 to your account. Are you for real? Probably 9 times out of 10, the attorney's gonna say, I didn't send that. So this is just telling them that it's out there and you're warning them, do not wire any money until you personally speak with your attorney, your title company, or me, and confirm that you have to do that.
Okay.
We've had our title company, they've had people that have wired $20,000. And it went to some account somewhere. So it's wire fraud. And then the last one that you wanna do, and this is. Again, it's a disclosure statement. In Keller Williams, the great thing about us is we have mortgage partners. We have title insurance people that provide title and a lot more than just title insurance. And we have a division for home and auto. You actually could call home and auto and send them your deck page. And they might be able to save you money. They've saved money for a bunch of the people here in the office. But those are our partners. And because we have those partners, we have to fill out forms, a business arrangement disclosure with title. And what they do here, agents that do this on consultation, they put the buyer's names, the date, the associate's name, and if they know the property, they'll put it there. Or they'll put TBD, to be determined. But it's just saying that, these are our partners, and there's one for title.
That's it, wait.
There's one for home and auto. And there's one for mortgage. And that's kind of like the same thing when you go to the doctor and the doctor's got an interest in the X-ray company. It's basically the same thing because we work with them. They're our ancillary partners. We have to disclose that we have an ancillary. And that's your consultation. Those are the documents. And now you're ready to go show houses. And you can put them. When you get into the MLS, you can put them on a drip. You can give them the link to the Keller Williams app. You can help them, show them where to download it. The part about the app that's good is that it's branded to you. So anytime they're on their phone and they're on their app, they're gonna see Debbie's picture. For every listing, and it may not be a Keller Williams listing, it could be another company's listing, but it's gonna be branded to Debbie, it's gonna be branded to you. They can take that app and they can put a school. And it's gonna show them the listings within a radius of that school. You get to know when they're on it, so it helps you know what's going on, because every command is gonna tell them what's going on. And then again, it's a tool that connects you and Keller Williams to these buyers. So everything that we do with our buyers, we do to make them stay with us. So once you have found the house, the home of their dreams, now the next thing you want to do is you're going to start a contract. And you can start the contract. There's then you don't want the buyer packet. Because now you come down here and there's the contract of sale. And it's a lot of pages. So I don't want to overwhelm you with that because we're going to have to take baby steps. But your buyer steps, first you do all the stuff for the consultation, then you're going to go out and work with them. Then you're going to do the contract. You will have talked with mortgage. Mortgage is going to tell you, they can do that. Because when mortgage does their pre-qualification for that property, they want to know what they're going to offer, how much the taxes are, because they need to take into account, it's 4 letters, it's PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Mortgage is gonna figure that number out to know what their monthly payment's gonna be. They're gonna send you a pre-qualification letter. It's just a basic letter that says, I've talked with them, I've met them. And they're qualified for X. And then you work on the contract. You need to find out from the buyers how much they're gonna put down. And then that tells you how much mortgage they're gonna have. And then in addition to that, when you're in the MLS. And there's, I wonder if I could go, do we have a listing, Debbie, that I can go look at that's got those documents on there?
Which ones?
Do you have a listing?
I just closed it.
Okay. All right, let me just go into. Let me just go into Hasbrook Heights.
You can check what Catherine says though, 21 Olive.
Oh, yeah, I could do that. So Hasbrook Heights has got, okay, that's good here. Okay, so. I
I
think,
think 125 Henry.
is that Ross?
I think so.
Okay, so let's look at this one, cause I think this is.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes, all right, so this is one of our listings. All right, and it's on Hasbrook Heights, it's listed for $750,077. So while you could pull the contract in through, normally you're gonna do the contract in through Command. You could start the contract here and then upload it, it just depends, but over here. So these are the photos. This is the map. And over here are the associated documents, and if I click on that. There's called a lead-based paint form. And a seller's disclosure. When the law changed in 2024. It said that every buyer. Should have access to the lead-based paint form. And the seller's disclosure. Before making an offer on the property, that's the way the law reads. So if you had a buyer that was interested in Rob's listing. When you're gonna go show it to them. You print out those documents. So that they can have them to look at. The seller's disclosure is about 16 pages. It talks about all the systems in the house, how old the furnace is, how old the roof is. The appliances, if there was ever any seepage through the basement, if it ever got flooded. And it's a whole long list of questions that every seller has to answer. But you would give those to your prospective buyer so they can review them before they make the offer. When I used to show houses, I would have that stuff printed. And then when, if my buyer said they were interested in it, I used to give it to them right then and there. But at least they have it. So that then when you go to make the, when you go to fill out the contract, they're gonna sign the contract, they're gonna sign the lead-based paint, they're gonna sign the seller's disclosure. And then you put that in a neat little package with the pre-approval and send that off to the agent. But before you would write the offer, you're gonna call the agent. Regardless of whether it's in this office or in another office and say, look, my buyers absolutely love your listing. And they wanna put an offer in. Do you have any offers on the table? In the market we're in, probably the listing agent's gonna say. We're gonna be taking offers and sometimes they'll tell you highest and best. By Tuesday at 5 o'clock. So now you have to deliver the awful news to your first time buyers that you're in a bidding situation. And they want highest and best. You're not gonna know what that number is. But if it's a brand new listing and they're telling you that there's multiple offers coming in. You can tell the buyer with 100% certainty that that house is gonna get a contract over $750, $750,000. You may have a buyer, I've been there, done that, where I tell my buyer, it's bidding situation. And they say, well, I wanna offer $725,000. So 25,000 off the asking price. And then you have to say, Mr. Buyer, this house is brand new to the market. There are multiple offers on the property. It's going to go over asking. How much do you want to spend? And I've had buyers that have said, no, write it for $750. So it means it went $223,223 over. Okay, whatever. And I'll go, that's not gonna do it. You can educate the buyer to a certain point. Eventually, if you've got that type of buyer, and we've all had them, they have to lose a house to understand they're not gonna get it. So when you tell a buyer, there's multiple offers, the house is listed for $750, I'm gonna round up. You need to be over that. And the buyer says, oh, no, I'm only gonna offer asking. That's what they asked for, that's what I'm gonna give them. Okay. You're not gonna get it, but I'll do whatever you want me to do. And then you have to go back and say, sorry, they took a higher offer. The next thing the buyer's gonna ask you is, well, how much did they take? Well, I can't tell you that, I don't know, we won't know till it closes. So then the next house they fall in love with, and you tell them there's multiple offers on it, it's gonna go over asking. Now they're going to make a better offer. And that's why it's so important to know how much the buyer can spend.
Yeah.
Because if they're pre-qualified to $750 and they're looking at $750, they're not in the game. And there were only 10 houses in Hasbrook Heights. So you know if somebody wants Hasbrook Heights, it's gonna go over asking. That's why then you've gotta say, well, if $750 is your max, we need to look in the start at the $650 range in case there's a bidding situation. But you would have all of that in there. There are, where is the, it's not in here, and I told them to put it in here. There is a form. They've gotta move that into, here, 117. If you have a situation where an agent tells you highest and best, and you do all the contract paperwork, you want to include the offer's confirmation of receipt of written offer. That should be on the top of your contract package. And basically what this form says is, here's the property address, here's your buyer's names, and this is what they offered. And then the owner has, when it's presented to them, the owner has to sign it. Now, again, in the state of New Jersey, with the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, the listing agent is supposed to present all offers within 24 hours. Does that happen? No. But they also, when there's multiple offers, and at least if your buyer went over asking and still didn't get the property, you're gonna get this form back with the seller's signature on it, that it was presented to them. So that you know, you can show your buyer, yes, they looked at your offer, they took a better offer. They don't Buyers don't wanna hear that. Buyers don't wanna hear, and when, when you say better offer. Some buyers will waive a home inspection. Some buyers will, only do inspections for systems. For the heating system, the roof, the mechanicals, the big ticket replacement items. So they'll put that as a condition in their offer. I've seen offers come in where they know they're going over asking. Now they're worried that it's going to, the mortgage appraisers are going to say whether it appraised for that amount, so that $750,000 listing. If it ends up with an $800,000 offer. Now you have to hope that it's going to appraise for 800. Sometimes the buyer will say up to $20,000, so if it only appraised for 780, I'll cover the other $20,000 for the appraisal gap. I've seen buyers offer moving expenses to seal the deal. So you're telling your buyer, maybe they did nothing, or maybe they just said, for home inspection, and somebody else added other things. Maybe another agent did appraisal gap or home inspection for mechanicals. But at least you've got this form there that says that they presented the offer. And you may, I hope for you with your first buyer, that your first contract that you write for them gets accepted. Don't be surprised if it takes 2 or 3 or 4. Debbie just had a situation where they were close to closing and it died in home inspection. You work a lot of, and now it died last week and she showed him more houses on the weekend. There's not much we can do. We just figure out what it was and we write up the next contract. And sometimes they come in here, the agents come in here and they'll get something to eat and they'll sit around these tables at lunchtime and they'll talk about it and they just throw out ideas. The neat part about this office is everybody wants everybody to succeed. There are some other offices where you wouldn't talk to another agent in there because you're afraid they're gonna steal your buyers. Well, it doesn't happen here. Everybody's willing to help everybody. When you get onboarded, they're all in WhatsApp. So they'll throw a question out and there'll be 10 agents that'll answer it. The one thing that you'll want to do that a lot of the agents do is they'll shadow for open houses. They'll help an agent at an open house if they need help. The one thing is, you can help agents for open houses for Keller Williams Parkviews. We have 4 other offices. You can't help those agents because each office is independently owned. So there's a form when the sellers have it for open house that you have a form that says you represent the seller. And you only represent the seller if it's a Keller Williams Parkviews listing. But the agents are always asking for help. They might have somebody that'll say, I've got a buyer that needs to, I have a home inspection and I can't make it. And they'll say, can you meet my buyer for the home inspection? And then they compensate the agent for their time for doing it. That's how everybody works. You got any other clear points, seasoned one over there?
No, but I would say the buyer consultation is very, very important. I would say even more so than, well, Joyce is gonna cover it, I guess. But more so than getting like all the paperwork right, like. For like long term, that buyer consultation, because I have now learned. That when you just tell them, oh, just sign this paperwork and you don't do the consultation, that's when it doesn't go well. That's the deal that just died last week.
Yeah, no,
That's
you're
right.
building rapport, like I
Yeah.
said, you're asking, you're learning about the buyers, but their wants, their needs. And once you know that, the towns that they want to live in. They may only, their parents may be in Hackensack and they want to. Maybe the parents are gonna babysit the kids. While the husband and wife go to work. So they wanna be maybe 20 minutes away from parents. So that there's, daycare coverage. And all of that, so if you know that, so say if they only wanna do that, so they're gonna look at Hasbrook Heights, Woodridge, Lodi, Saddlebrook, Elmwood Park. Maybe Paramus, Maywood. So you're gonna set the search up for those towns. Because you listen to them. Until they tell you. I can't find anything in those towns, let's expand the search. So if you sat in a 45-minute buyer consultation and buyer Debbie says, I wanna look in these towns. And you set up the search and start sending her listings in Ramsey and Park Ridge and Northern Bergen County. Well, the buyer's gonna say, I told you I didn't wanna live there. So that's why where Debbie said, getting to know your buyers. It creates a client for life. I can't stress that enough. And, it just. Understanding, listening. And you never ask a buyer or a seller a yes or no question. Unless you're asking them, have you been pre-qualified for mortgage? That's an absolute yes or no. But instead of saying, do you want a house that has a family room? Well, they're gonna give you either a yay or a nay. By asking them, what do you see your house looking like? That's the conversation, because then they're telling you, well, we want a living room, I want a formal dining room, I have a huge family and I wanna host the holidays. And so we like a first floor, an open concept where the family room you can see the family room from the kitchen and you're just writing down all this stuff. But you're getting them to talk. Instead of saying yes or, just asking them yes or no. Do you need a full bath on the first floor? Do you need a home office? It used to be that we needed just 3 bedrooms before COVID. Now, sometimes people that normally just wanted a 3-bedroom house want that 4th bedroom. And it could be upstairs or it could be on the first floor as like a den type of thing, because they work from home. Or maybe they work from home 2 days a week. So those are all the stuff, and there is a whole thing, once you get into command, you can see the buyer consultation, but you can use that. Some agents, it may be easier for you in the beginning to use, like Debbie uses the buyer consultation printed out, cause it keeps you on track.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say.
keeps you focused, you don't lose your place. Or, you've got somebody like a Billy or a Al that have, 20+ years, they don't need that, it's all here, like, it's all here for me to have the. First, I thought that was fire alarm.
Oh.
But the buyer consultation will keep you on tracks. And that just sets the groundwork. And when you're done, you just do those other 4 forms, it's because technically you have to have that buyer agency agreement signed before you go show a house. And the other ones are real easy, and once you get used to it and it's practice, and it's okay when they're in here. You can script practice and you can role play with anybody. You can role play with me, you can role play somebody else, just so that you get it. You could go through those forms in 5 minutes. Once you've done your buyer consult, this is the buyer agency agreement, told you with the wire fraud, I'm just protecting you. Don't send any money unless you know who sent you that email. And the affiliated partners. It just goes along that way.